Everyone. Welcome to the next episode of EPM Chronicles and Confessions. We're here with Patrick Nicholas here. Patrick, could you please introduce yourself and your EPM journey?
Yep, sure. Thanks, Tim. So I am the sales director for CCH Tagetik here in the UK and Ireland. So my EPM journey started actually in the world of finance. Originally I'm qualified as in accounting and economics as my degree, and I kind of I have to say slightly fell out of university with a bit of a thud, and landed up my first job was at a company called Whitbread, who I'm sure you know, kind of quite close to us, to yourself, growing up in Luton down there, and me up here in Bedford. So I was down there and I was in their team that was doing all things like bank reconciliations. So pretty dull job, but they had a nifty bit of kit by a company called Trintech. And so I got to know the consultants that were implementing Trintech. Cut a long story short, they were looking to expand into the UK from Texas. So they're based in Dallas at the time. And I joined them in their support team, then moved into pre-sales. Then after a few years there, I actually moved to Oracle. So I was Oracle Hyperion pre-sales for a couple of years. And then I decided to follow the money and went from pre-sales into full-blown sales to a company called BlackLine. And then I found myself at Tagetik just over 6 years ago.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. So this is a question I ask everybody really, because it's a very technical term that we're in. Have you encountered any misconceptions regarding explaining what you do in terms of EPM? And what have you done in terms of explaining that?
Yes, an interesting point. I wouldn't say I've had many misconceptions about EPM as a term in total. I've had some quite amusing episodes where I've tried to explain to my wife kind of some of the stuff that I do. But I would say probably there's quite a lot of amusing misconceptions probably about Tagetik in the market is probably the one.
Right.
Even still to this day, people still say things like it's only in Italian, they don't have any customers in the UK, just sort of fairly lazy stuff that was probably true about 10 years ago. So that's probably the major one, and it does we do sort of have a bit of a laugh about that internally to get it when we hear those types of objections, because they're just so absurd, really.
Cool. So what's been your biggest challenge in your kind of career, and how have you kind of dealt with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I guess I took a slightly unconventional route into EPM, because when I first started working at Trintech, they weren't really part of traditional EPM as it is now, because they're all around kind of reconciliations and balance sheet recs. So I think probably when we were trying to position things like balance sheet reconciliations back in 2008, just kind of after SOX had come out in the US, it was really kind of just very much an education of the market, because people didn't know these tools existed at the time. They were expanding into kind of covering the full financial close, but really, obviously traditional EPM at that stage was really just purely consolidation and planning. So I'd say that's probably been one of the biggest challenges, just kind of sort of changing perceptions around that topic and integrating it in. When I joined Oracle, actually my main focus there was to be the leading expert of the ARM, account reconciliation management product. So again, it was something that was fairly new and unusual to a lot of the Hyperion people there. So I think kind of sort of just taking the time to explain what a balance sheet reconciliation is, why you can't do a rec in HFM, that type of thing. That's probably kind of been one of the biggest challenges, I think.
Cool. Could you share with the audience a success story that you've had?
Yeah, sure. I mean, probably for me, being in sales is probably a bit different from some of your other more interesting projects, I'm sure. But probably for me, it's those customers that we've signed where, in tech sales specifically, there are certain companies out there that are sort of quite well known for not necessarily spending a lot of money on financial software and EPM especially. And so we did a really big deal with Admiral Insurance about 3 or 4 years ago, and a lot of people just said to us they're never going to buy, that don't bother. But in the end, we signed them up as a big customer. They really saw the power of the Tagetik platform, and then they expanded that out to basically everything that we do. So they do their IFRS 17 compliance with us. They do a full global consolidation with us as well. So that for me was very rewarding, just to be able to say, look, there's a very powerful business case for signing up to Tagetik, and that type of thing, really. I think where you got your back up against the wall, and it's not really kind of going in your favor, and then you come out with the victory in the end.
Sure. So in addition to that, what's like the rewarding aspect of your career for yourself?
So I think probably the part that with my background in pre-sales and accounting, I'm probably quite unusual for a sales guy, especially a sales director, and I do still get quite a kick out of the technology itself.
Right.
So I do still kind of geek out, when the release notes come out every quarter, I sort of have a look through, even things like the bug fixes sometimes I sort
Yeah.
of find quite fascinating. So I still get a buzz out of that. And I think one of the nice things about Tagetik is because as you know, it does so much stuff, and there's so many new use cases that you can find for it. So we've taken a much more sort of, I guess, industry vertical focus within my team, and we're finding new opportunities for we found a new opportunity for sort of like calculating journals for pension payments, for example.
Right.
And it's a new thing. We found that in one company. We know it's going to have impact on lots of other companies. So just kind of like these interesting use cases, like an accounting engine or something that we can reapply elsewhere. Those are the things that I think are still sort of quite exciting within the space.
Thank you. So this is another quirky question, really. Is there any kind of funny moments in your career that you can share with us?
Yeah, I've had a I've had a few interesting moments. I think I don't know whether the audience would find them that funny, but I mean, definitely one of the ones when I was at Oracle, I had to do a presentation for the Ministry of Defence, and we
Right.
went to, I think it was MOD, I think they were over in Bristol, and we did this presentation. It was a room full of probably 30 people all in suits, and there was one guy, I remember him, his name was Steve, and he was in full army garb from head to toe, even like the hat and everything. I can't remember, he was obviously quite senior in there, and no one said anything else while he was in the room, and he was just an absolute tyrant. It was like a Rottweiler, would not let me go. Like, I was just drilling into this stuff. Basically said I could build all this stuff. It's really easy. As just basically kind of making out like I was wasting my time. But he actually apologized to me right at the very end, which was kind of nice. But yeah, just odd stuff like that.
Cool. Thank you. So what's been your inspiration to join your current company? And also, like we're all moving around at the moment in many ways. Inspiration to stay.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I joined Tagetik at an interesting time at the back end of 2017. They'd just been acquired by Wolters Kluwer at that point in time. So I'd known Tagetik loosely in the space, right? I knew their name, and I was looking to leave BlackLine at the time. And I was doing a bit of research. Someone suggested Tagetik to me. I saw that they were doing some really interesting stuff around IFRS 16, which I was getting a lot of questions around. I knew that was really hot in the market, so I was quite interested to see that they were on the front foot with developing a solution for that. I knew they'd done a lot of stuff with Solvency 2, and I'd known from my
Yeah.
experience at Oracle Hyperion how difficult that was. So that I found that um, quite interesting. And then just the other part of it, just the culture of Tagetik. So a lot of
Yeah.
people still don't know that Tagetik, is an Italian company. Our head office is still to this day in Tuscany, as you know,
Yeah.
Tim.
Yeah.
Beautiful place, isn't it? We've got the Tuscan villas out there, which occasionally we go out and we can take customers out there, and it's such a culturally rich organization, even though it's part of a much bigger company. And the reason why I stay is for that same reason, right? It's got that really good heart, that Italian heart, but the backing of a monster in Wolters Kluwer. We get huge level of investment. We get all that benefit from working with all the other businesses in Wolters Kluwer. Wolters Kluwer is seen, for example, as a real leader in ESG, and that's a real boon for us with Tagetik as well. So yeah, it's a really exciting. We're one of the probably the only companies in our space that are actually growing and recruiting right now. Everybody else is sadly shrinking and making redundancies, and we're the exact opposite.
That's it. So on addition to that, the industry is actually becoming very dynamic, and a lot of things are happening. How do you stay abreast of all the stuff that's happening? What do you do in terms of understanding and information sources and things like that?
Yeah, I guess obviously being in sales, you're pretty much at the front line of a lot of this stuff. Now I'm kind of, I guess, one step removed from that, kind of managing the team. I'm less kind of on the front line, but we have to stay on top of all of the latest technologies. We have to make sure that we understand, our competitors, our value proposition, where we're stronger, perhaps some of the things where we're not quite so good, and just kind of bear those things in mind. So I think I have to say Tagetik's very good at kind of keeping us abreast. We have a monthly sales meeting where they kind of give us as much information as we can. I personally regularly visit competitors' websites, attend webinars. Like I was on a webinar last week about SAP and their approach to FP&A, that type of thing. So I make sure I'm on top of those. So I try and take that same methodology with everything I do. Whether it's best practices in sales. I'm a strong advocate for kind of the science behind sales and kind of implementing really strong, rigorous sales methodologies. So similar kind of thing really. I get a lot of information from LinkedIn and the internet, that type of thing.
Cool. So this industry, we're encouraging people to come in there and also understand the things we're doing. What's your key advice for beginners or novices trying to understand more about this industry?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think EPM is quite an interesting space, isn't it? Because probably for about the first 10 or 15 years of it, it really didn't change very much. You had like these very separate applications, very acquisitive, sort of towards the end of the 2010s, very much, Oracle had acquired Hyperion, SAP had acquired Outlook Soft, IBM had acquired Cognos, and it very much, kind of coagulated. And now we're kind of seeing that a lot more vendors like Tagetik in sort of smaller vendors in the market. But I think for me, I think the most valuable thing you can do is probably get industry experience first. I think it's really good to kind of go in and understand the technology. But for me, even though I was at the lowest level of accountant that you could possibly be doing bank reconciliations, even still, and I'd still get a bit of ribbing from some of my colleagues for this, I still kind of draw on a lot of that information from when I was doing bank recs or when I was preparing management reporting or posting last minute journals and month end from my time in there. And nothing really can replace those real life stories, whether you go into consulting, whether you go into sales or pre-sales, being able to really relate and talk someone's language is probably one of the most important things I think you can do. So I would encourage people maybe get a couple of years in industry first, and then get a grounding and understanding of why EPM is important and why so many finance teams are so inefficient, and then move into the technology side afterwards.
Fantastic. So in terms of EPM, what do you think was going to happen in the next 5 years? I know things are already moving already, but what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think the trend is just bigger and broader, really. So, one of the big things we've done at Tagetik over the last 5 years is introduce, our analytical information hub, which is like a financial data store. It basically just means you can draw data from anywhere, have as much granularity as you want, and almost have your consolidation system and your planning system sitting on top of a data warehouse in the same place. So I think, greater interoperability with other platforms and solutions. And I just think the nature of the granularity and the breadth of the data that's needed, I just think like old school cube-based solutions are really just going to have to die a death. If you can't bring in loads and loads of data sources and loads of really granular data, the really interesting side of EPM around kind of data-driven analytics, or kind of answering that basic question of what's driving my sales, and kind of having that really kind of AI-driven view of what are the core drivers that are driving your business, and then using that to feed into the forecast. You have to have a huge level of granularity and interoperability there. So I think it's just going to get bigger, the scope of EPM. We've seen it expand into tax. ESG is obviously becoming a big thing, and I think as more and more stuff gets pulled into finance, that inevitably will expand the remit and the demands of the data within EPM. So I think it's just going to get bigger and more complex and more difficult for a lot of those legacy vendors, really.
Thank you so much, Patrick, today. Really enjoyed that. And, definitely, we'll touch base and maybe do other podcasts in the future. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Tim. Thanks very much.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Same to you.